Hey everyone, welcome to 3 Beers Deep for June 22nd, 2015. Holy crap, E3 2015 is over. It's almost like I wasn't even there because I wasn't even there. Thanks for tuning in to my weekly Q&A show in which you submit questions to patrickklubik.tumblr.com and I pick from some of them and other ones I answered at random on a daily basis. I didn't get a chance to answer too many last week because E3 was happening, even though I wasn't there, which some people have had some questions about, and we'll get to that relatively soon in the show today. I was busy covering it from home, which actually in weird ways was more exhausting because you don't get a lot of the adrenaline boost of being at E3. Instead, you're just on your couch or in your normal desk chair, and you get tired. And at some point, the coffee just was not doing anything for me. So instead, let's open up this PBR and really just start cranking away at 3 Beers Deep. So you got questions? I'm here to answer them, or at least knock into this microphone and think about answering them. All right, Anonymous asked, "Hey PK, hey Anonymous. I was just thinking, did you know they announced Dark Souls 3? I did, because I wrote up the news story. Wow, it's shocking how that news is not even news. Oh, I get it. You were making a joke. As I just finished Dark Souls 2 earlier this year, loved every second. It needs a break badly. Are you surprised at how it basically disappeared? And where is your level of excitement as we will now have had 4 Souls-types games in 2 years? Too much or just right? Keep up the great work. Citizen X3639. Okay, so he does have a username. Not so anonymous. I have mixed feelings on Dark Souls 3. I certainly agree that it feels like we've had a lot of these games between Dark Souls, then Dark Souls 2, then Bloodborne, then Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. There's just a lot going on with these games, especially with the advent of Dark Souls, in which they kind of blew up in a way that didn't exist with the original Demon Souls. Now, granted, there's a lot of people that really enjoyed Demon Souls. That game, amongst the people that played it, it was incredibly popular. But it was kind of Dark Souls where it's sort of creeping into a collective consciousness as sort of a genre type or a subgenre that didn't exist before. And so now From Software is capitalizing on that, and you have Dark Souls, which, okay, maybe there'll be a Dark Souls 4, maybe there won't be a Dark Souls 4. That part doesn't matter. They're going to keep making Souls games, and I suspect they're going to keep making Bloodborne games, which means From Software is now poised to be putting out a Bloodborne and Souls game on alternating years going forward. That's assuming that we get Bloodborne 2 in 2017, which I expect that Sony is probably going to ask them to produce. This time, Miyazaki is a co-director on Dark Souls 3. Remains to be seen, is that just an optics thing in which the perception of Dark Souls 2 was that Miyazaki left to make Bloodborne and then Dark Souls 2 wasn't that interesting, and so they're saying, oh, he's a co-director of Dark Souls 3, so that fans are on board with the third one? Or did he actually realize that he couldn't build both at the same time, but found ways, once Bloodborne was kind of up and running and sprinting on its own, that he was able to dedicate time to Dark Souls 3 in a way that he wasn't able to dedicate to Dark Souls 2? We'll never probably know the actual answer to that, and we'll have to see that surface in the quality of Dark Souls 3. That said, if it is true, and that Miyazaki is kind of pouring his heart and soul into Dark Souls 3 in a way he didn't with Dark Souls 2, I am tremendously excited for it. I'm okay with playing. If the Souls games become my Call of Duty, in which there's just another one of those every year, I guess I'm okay with that. Now, does that mean that the repetition, we lose some of its uniqueness? Absolutely. Does the repetition mean that some of the charm is gone? Absolutely. Am I kind of maybe okay with that? Like, is it probably better for the series that there's a longer break in between? Sure. Will I happily play a new one every single year? Sure. And also remember, I think people sometimes forget, there was a 2-year gap only in between Demon Souls and Dark Souls. And so it's not like they sat on the Souls games for 6 years and were like, okay, finally, we will bestow upon you Dark Souls. Like, that game came out relatively quickly in the grand scheme of things. And I'm encouraged by some of Miyazaki's comments in which he says, look, Dark Souls 3 is a turning point in which we have to look at some other ways to approach this series. And he specifically mentioned how From Software has experience in mech games and ninja games. And so essentially, if we saw the Souls games as an archetype, and then they just start applying different thematic trappings to it, I mean, who wouldn't play a futuristic Dark Souls? Who wouldn't play a ninja Dark Souls? I mean, if that's what From Software becomes, is just sort of like experimenting with the basic idea of the Souls games and applying different sort of themes around it, there are worse fates, my friend. There are worse fates indeed. So cautiously optimistic about Dark Souls 3. Obviously, I'm going to play it no matter what happens. Building off that, Karch says, so after watching you play through Dark Souls and Bloodborne, I finally jumped into the games during the summer Steam sale with Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition. It's definitely a lot of fun, but the one complaint I have is the invasion stuff. I've been invaded multiple times and have just been categorically stopped with essentially no chance for survival, which is super frustrating in a game where dying is such a big deal. Is there no way to turn that off other than playing offline? I've never really bothered with turning it off. Obviously, offline is basically what you're looking for, and you aren't penalized for playing offline. You can move between offline and online however you please. So if you're in a particularly difficult section, or you're just working your way through a new set of enemies, or you want to practice on a boss, like, go into offline mode. I don't think you should be shamed for not wanting to deal with invasions, especially because the kinds of people that are doing invading in Dark Souls PC, a game that is years and years old at this point, and a game that is even older than that because it's a PC version based on an older title, are people that are just there to screw with you. It's entirely possible that they're cheaters, and there's no way you can beat them. And obviously, if you're still learning the game for the first time, then it's going to be a frustrating experience because these are people that have played the game. If they're invading in 2015, they have played this game for hundreds, if not thousands of hours. The competition is stacked in a way that is unfair to you. So, sir or madam, I don't want to presume, play in offline mode. Don't feel bad about it. Just play the game in a way that makes you enjoy it. Don't play Dark Souls in a manner that you're expected to, or that it's the way to play it. Like, that's all BS. Play the game in a way that's going to make you happy, in a way that's going to allow you to progress, in a way that's going to allow you to keep moving forward. Because there's other Souls games you can play. And once you've got the hang of it, hey, maybe then you jump in with invasions, or maybe you become an invader yourself. Just enjoy the game at the pace and the way that you want to do it. Don't worry about this. It's got to be played with invasions. I mean, I think it is part of the experience, but it's not a requirement. Do whatever is going to make you happy. Anonymous asks, a rumor is that the Australian classification has outed a Ubisoft-published Zombie for Xbox One. If they've stripped the second screen stuff out of Zombie U, do you think there's enough interesting ideas to support a re-release now? If I remember, it had some Dark Souls-esque cross-pollination of loot and messages. I've talked about this on previous videos, but I think Zombie U can absolutely work without the second screen gamepad experience that was part of the Wii U version. Did I think that was crucial and interesting and a lot of fun? Absolutely. Like, part of what if you aren't familiar with Zombie U, it's kind of a, if we're being reductive and kind of chaining off of Dark Souls, like, it's Soulsian in that the attack animations that you have access to are like very lumbering and slow, and you don't have a lot of options. And when you commit to an attack, you really have to commit to it. When you die, the only way to go get your equipment is to go and find your body, and sometimes you'll die in an awkward place where you're not even able to go back and get your equipment, which means you're starting from scratch. Now, you're not starting from scratch because you have experience, you understand the world, so you're able to progress in a way that isn't possible if you were literally starting from scratch and you weren't remembering everything you had experienced so far. But part of what made the Wii U version interesting was that when you wanted to change equipment, the game kept going. There was no way to pause the game. And so when you were down, like switching to a pistol or combining ammunition or whatever the case may be, the game was still occurring up top, and then you were dragging things and interfacing with the gamepad. And so you maybe were running from a zombie, ran around a corner, you're like, oh, I got to get a flare out, or like whatever it is you wanted to do, and that zombie's still shambling forward. There's no way to stop that. The game continues to press forward regardless of the fact that you want to pause it. And it worked really well in that you could still survey the entire game as it was playing out, and then still mess with the interface on the gamepad. Like, the fact that there were two screens benefited the experience of playing Zombie U, but I don't think it was a requirement to make it work. I think you can make that game supremely entertaining, utterly terrifying without the gamepad. I think it loses something, but I don't think it ruins the experience. So I'm hoping they do a Zombie U for Xbox One and PS4, and even if it's just a port of the previous game, I'll take it. Jackal ZXA. Have you seen the Metal Gear Solid 5 E3 demo? It looks like there's an option for setting gear and outfit for your buddy character. In the demo, there was an option to set Quiet's outfit, the outfit we've seen being called Naked. Here's what you could set Snake's camo to in Metal Gear Solid 3. So it looks like you'd be able to set her to wear actual clothes after she joins your crew. Yeah, a couple of people have pointed this out to me. I watched the 40-minute demo, about 3/4 of it, for an article I was writing about Kotaku about kind of the interesting things your dog can do in that game. I've been paying attention a whole lot to MGS5. I played Ground Zeroes. It didn't do a lot for me. I recognized that the mechanics were impressively better, huge strides from where the series had been in the past in terms of being a sort of competent action game, a game with shooting that people just have high expectations for, because there's a lot of games with a lot of good shooting. And Ground Zeroes got that series much more palatable and on the level with other games that we've played. That said, it for whatever reason just didn't. I played through it once and was just kind of like, just it really didn't do a whole lot for me. That said, I watched most of this Ground Zeroes demo, and it's up at IGN.com if you haven't seen it. Highly recommend checking it out, or at least kind of scrubbing through it. Showing the open world stuff, just showing the sheer variety of options you have as Snake, the ability to have a dog with you that can attack enemies, that can tag things on the map for you, that can go collect items. Like, it's just really neat, and it just seems like it's the right kind of weird, zany, fun stuff smashed up with the technological ambition of Kojima. I don't know if the story stuff's going to work out. My guess is I'm not going to like it and it's going to be garbage. I would love to be pleasantly surprised. I've set the bar extremely low for the Phantom Pain, and so it's not going to be hard for it to have to get over the low bar that I'm setting for it. But that said, Quiet specifically, it was a character that I have actively said and have watched plenty of others criticize for just being crude and sexist and gross in a lot of ways. When the character is turned into an action figure and the thing that's bragged about on Twitter is that the material used on her breasts are squeezable, like, it seems to confirm a lot of the suspicions that character's outfit appears to be not done for character reasons. It's possible, that you can come up with a justification, and people have come up with theories for why Quiet dresses in a bikini as a sniper in the middle of the desert. That maybe her skin adapts and she's kind of a chameleon or something like that. But it does appear that in the game itself, once she becomes part of your crew, and where you can play as her or have her come along as a buddy, that you can change her outfit, and that the version displayed on screen, the one we have seen in all the promotional materials, is called quote-unquote naked. She's fairly close, not quite there, to actually being naked, but that sounds like she'll have other outfits that you can put her in, and one would assume that will reflect in the real-time cutscenes and the gameplay that plays out. So I guess, if the compromise is that Hideo Kojima likes her in that outfit, but that you can put her in something a little more reasonable as soon as she's part of your crew, sure, I guess that'll be one of the first things that I do in MGS5. I wish that PC version was coming out day and date with the console version. It's going to be tough to not just buy the PS4 version on the day that comes out and not wait the 2 weeks. I'm somehow hoping they're going to move up that date. Probably not. 2 weeks isn't that bad, though. Anonymous, why didn't you attend E3 this year? Pretty much the story is as simple as when I joined Kotaku in January, I joked to Steven Totillo, my editor, that, man, it's been a long time since I've not been at E3. Like, I wouldn't mind not going. And then it was like a half joke, half serious. And then it got to like 3 weeks before E3, and I was like, hey, am I going? And he was like, you said you didn't want to go. I was like, oh, I guess I did say that. So it was simple as that. I kind of regret saying that, though. It relates to another question. Anonymous asks, sad to not see you on the E3 floor. I'm glad you got a break, but you seem to have this enthusiasm for games that the other game journalists lost a long time ago. Hopefully we can see you out there next year. Well, that's incredibly kind of you to say. One of the things I try to impart in my own coverage of games and the way I talk about games, and especially at E3 this year, is to convey the things I'm excited about and not to pull any punches, not to shy away from criticism or pointing out things that I don't agree with. But, one of the things I tried to do at E3 this year was no snark. I didn't really talk about it. I mentioned it briefly in a video at 3 Beers Deep. But it's so easy to snark on Twitter. And there's a difference between criticism and snark. And snark is just easy jokes at the expense of these press conferences and these events and these games. And what I wanted to do was make genuine observations, positive or negative, and to convey the things I was excited about in games, the things that I was noticing at E3 2015 that was like, man, that's cool, man, that's bullshit, man, that's interesting, man, that bugs me. But to do it in a way that felt genuine and conveyed the emotions I was feeling, and not in a way to try and just get cheap retweets on Twitter. Partially because I'm just not that funny. And I will leave stuff like that to the folks that are, genuinely funny and can crack jokes. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. That was my approach. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Hopefully you did as well. And I have plans to hopefully be at E3 2016. I got to admit, part of the reason I didn't kind of tune in to any of Giant Bomb's coverage was because it kind of bummed me out to not be there. Not that I regret the choices I've made, the career decisions I have employed, but I just miss those guys. They're my friends, and I would have loved to hang out with them, have some beers, maybe sit in on a video or two, and that was not to be, but that's okay, because you know what? There's always another E3. And let's start wrapping this up. What about this last question? Hey, Calvero. Hey, you. Hey, Calvero. Although I haven't tried VR yet, seeing you play horror games with the Oculus makes me think the combination of those two things is going places. However, have you stopped to think about the traumatic shit that AR augmented horror or augmented reality horror is going to create? For instance, imagine playing something like PT, but instead that monster is in your own hallway. Yeah. I've written about in the past that I think horror and virtual reality is going to be too much for a lot of people. I think the jokey headline that people say is like, well, how long until someone has a heart attack while playing a horror game in virtual reality? And, maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't. And maybe it'll be horror's fault, and maybe it won't. I think that's kind of here nor there. But there's something about virtual reality and horror that is more than any other type of game. Horror is so augmented, so exaggerated in virtual reality because there are so many little mechanisms that you can do to remind yourself like, oh, this isn't real. And that is to look around, see what's around you, and to remind yourself like, oh, my couch is here, my significant other is here, my friend is here, or I can get up and go to the bathroom, or I can close my eyes, or I can shut my ears. Like, there are things that you can do when you're watching a film that you can't do when you're playing a game. And augmented reality seems like a horrifying hybrid of the two of those, in which you are surrounded by things you're familiar with, but they are now suddenly completely awful and terrifying. And so does that sound exciting? Yes, but it also makes me wonder if some of that stuff is going to edge into territory that makes me uncomfortable. I've talked about in previous 3 Beers Deep episodes how I haven't taken the leap to doing the haunted houses in which you actually have people touch you and throw you around. And I know people enjoy those things, but I've never been able to get over the hump, and that just seems like a bridge too far for me. And I wonder, for virtual horror, if augmented reality and some VR stuff is going to be sometimes just a little much. But until I get to that bridge, until I decide I can't cross it, don't you worry. I'm going to try and cross that bridge for you on video. In fact, I haven't done a Spookin' with Scoops in such a long time that we're going to do one real soon. Stay tuned for details on that. Hopefully, everyone can tune in on Twitch and on YouTube. But that's going to do it for 3 Beers Deep. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. You can download audio versions of this if you're watching this on YouTube at Inventory Management on iTunes. You can also go to inventorymanagement.simplecast.fm. Stream episodes, download episodes. It's all there for you. And also, if you're looking for me in podcast form with other people, I now have a podcast in Chicago called Match 3, and where I am joined by freelance writer Gita Jackson and middle school teacher Sam Phillips as we deconstruct the cultural context of video games in 2015 and beyond. Please join us. You can find that at match3.simplecast.fm. That's with a actual number 3, and also Match 3 on iTunes. So please check that out if you'd like it. I think it's pretty good. Looking forward to recording some more episodes of that, and I will talk to everyone real soon.